All right. This one was making big rounds last week, and we had it queued up, but we did the podcast on the OpenAI stuff. So this one I find really fascinating. It's called TL Draw. And what I did here, because I didn't want to do it real time, I kind of queued it up. I drew this. I saw someone else do it, so I thought this was a good example. So I made up a game. It's a famous game, J. Cal's first video game, Pong.
Pong.
Yeah. And this is very monumental, right, to think about what's going to happen here, because this was one of the first video games ever created for Atari, I believe. And so what I said is like, here's a paddle. It's controlled by the Q and Z keys. Here's
and this is just
paddle.
A line drawing you made on your computer.
I drew it in this app down here.
You drew it in this app. You made a square.
Yeah, I made a square.
You made 2 rectangles for the paddles. You made a ball.
Yeah.
I get it.
And then I told it the rules, and I said the scores here. And then all I have to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to highlight all these things that I did, and I'm going to hit this button that says make real. And this is going to spin for this is going to spin for about, maybe 30 seconds. And, think about the work that went into building the first Pong and what we're going to have here. And what this is going to do is, we've talked about like low code and no code environments. This is the evolution of that. Okay, so here we go. So here's Pong.
Okay.
And you can see here, I
can
control this.
Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly.
This is deranged. It literally wrote the code and made the game Pong from a drawing.
Yeah, and then you can create a link.
Oh my God, this is insane. Do you know how long it took Nolan Bushnell in 1973 to build the first Pong? I just looked it up.
No.
There's a Wired story. It took 3 months for them to build Pong. You did it in 3 minutes.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Wow.
It's pretty wild.
That is mind-blowing.
Yeah. This one, for some reason, is missing one of the lines. But when I did this earlier, it had both paddles. Maybe I got to run it again or something. But
I mean, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. And you can see here, I'm controlling and it's keeping score as well, right? So, wild, huh?
I mean, when we start thinking about this, all you have to do is, extrapolate from here, because that's how technology works. So Pong was one of the original games. Then you get Breakout, then you get Defender, you get Asteroids.
Yeah.
And then you could say, to the game, make a more interesting version, or make a version that works in VR, or make a version that works with Apple's headset and uses some IP from Disney. You're going to be able to just talk to this.
Yeah.
So you do a drawing, a sketch, it makes a computer program, and then you just talk to it back and forth. And I was in the car this weekend driving, to Lake Tahoe with my 13-year-old. And I set up there's an action button. Do you know the iPhone 15 has an action button?
Yep, exactly.
I program my action button. What do you think I program my action button to do?
ChatGPT.
You got it. So when I double click when I hold my shortcut, it opens up the ChatGPT voice mode. So now I'm driving, not looking at it, got it in the phone stand in the cradle. And I asked it about the conflict between, I asked it about Hamas, the organization. She had questions about that. I asked it about the Middle East conflict. I asked it about the solutions, and it just talked to us while we were driving. And then I asked it about The Cure, because she wanted to know about Boys Don't Cry and their greatest hits. And then she said, well, what genre is The Cure? And I said, well, I think it's new wave. And then I asked it, and it was like, they were post-punk. And then as they evolved, they became new wave. So I was right, but I didn't think they were post-punk so much. But then that kind of made sense to me.
Yeah.
And it gave a pretty great answer. And I was just thinking, this is like having a tutor, not just for my daughter, but for me too.
Yep.
Because I'm guessing, okay, what genre is The Cure? I kind of think it's rock and roll, kind of new wavy.
Yep.
Kind of punk I didn't think of, but now that I think about it, it was a little bit post-punk, wasn't it? And so anyway, you think about what we would do listening to, used to be a radio show on Sunday nights. I forgot the name of it. Vince Gelsna did it in New York. And it was Vince Gelsna did this show every Sunday night where he just explained rock and roll to you. Yeah. And people would record it and tape it. And I was just like, wow, this is like Vince Gelsna's show on K-Rock.
Yeah, we've lost the art of that. Even like MTV back in our era, they would go through kind of and do that. We've just lost that now, right? It's all about, kind of advertising these days. But, those experiences.
Idiot's Delight was the name of the show. Idiot's Delight was the name.
Idiot's Delight. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Finn Scelsa's, Scelsa's Idiot Delight. A really interesting show.
And so what I take from what you just talked about there, Jason, is, I don't know if you've seen Sal Khan's talk, the 2 Sigma talk that he did at TED, which basically talks about if you give anyone a tutor, they can improve their test scores by 2 standard deviations, right? It's a great TED talk. It's from this year. And he talks about the impact of like ChatGPT and LLMs for that. And so, think about the amount of knowledge these things have, the cost, which is definitely pretty minimal, and making that available to everyone on the planet. Like, that's a huge lift for our entire society, right? A lot of challenges we see come from lack of education. And so we're on the front end of this curve, but I love that use case. I'm going to try it out.
Yeah, it's just a great thing when you're in the car. I think also it could play games with you. Remember, Alexa had some games it could play.
Yeah, of course.
So I think it's going to play some.
You can make up the games too. You can make up the games,
right? We could just say, "Hey, we want to play rock and roll trivia. Can you give us some rock and roll trivia?" I bet you we could do a pretty good job at that. So I just think it's like
lyrics, or something.
Well, this concept of a personal tutor, I think, is going to be very powerful. In fact, I was thinking about doing, like 20 years ago, a little bit of fiction writing. I never got around to it, but my first story that I wrote, it wasn't like a Black Mirror story, but it was a little Black Mirror-esque, that somebody had put implants of headphones in their ears, and that they had a personal assistant that would talk to them constantly, and it would read to them stock prices, and it was about some internet
your version of the pin.
Well, oh yeah, exactly. But it was an implant actually, and it was a .com person.
Yeah.
And I had written about the .com era, but like 30 years later, and they went insane because the stock market went 24/7, which was a prediction I had that the stock market would go 24/7. And he became obsessed with the stock price and trying to change it and manipulate it. And the stock price was being read to him every 30 seconds. And then he would be doing things in between. He went mad. Because I just had interviewed somebody as a journalist about, this flow of information. And then somebody was pitching a 24-hour stock market in the .com era. It never happened. And people figured out this is a really bad idea.
Well, with Neuralink, we're not too far away.
Well, and that's the interesting part. 23 years later, when I wrote that little short story, I wish I could find my laptop with it. Now I think this AI and the TV, and then the movie Her kind of gives you a path to that. You got to be very careful with this because you could just be in constant dopamine hit mode, constant learning mode. And I have a little bit of that now. I don't know if you have this addiction to podcasts, but I have probably 100 podcasts I listen to. And I go to sleep listening to them. And some nights I stay up for 2 hours listening to podcasts. It's very dangerous.
We
should have Sal Khan back on the pod.
Yeah, for that. And, definitely watch the talk, Jake Held, the 2 Sigma.
Yeah, I'm going to watch it now.
Talk.
Listen, selling software is hard enough right now, man. It's hand-to-hand combat out there in B2B land. The last thing you need to do is slow your sales team down because you don't have your SOC 2 dialed in. So if you're SaaS or a services company and you store consumer data in the cloud, you know what you need to do? You need to check out Vanta. They're going to get your SOC 2 compliant easier and faster. And Vanta makes it so easy to get and renew your SOC 2. On average, Vanta customers are SOC 2 compliant in just 2 to 4 weeks. Compare that to 3 to 5 months without Vanta. They're going to save you hundreds of hours of work and up to 85% on compliance costs. And Vanta does more than just SOC 2. They also automate up to 90% compliance for GDPR, HIPAA, and more. You can't afford to lose out on those major customers, the lighthouse customers, the big fish, the whales, because of silly stuff like lacking compliance. Just work with Vanta. I'm an investor in the company. It's a great company. Get your compliance automated, get it tight is right, and close those big deals. Here's the best part. Vanta's going to give you 1,000 off because they love This Week in Startups. They love startups. Vanta.com/twist. That's VANTA.com/twist to get $1,000 off your SOC 2.